Good morning, Boker Tov. This week's Torah portion begins the story of Abraham, where God tells him, go to the land that I will show you and I will make you into a great nation. And the question is, the Torah just begins by telling us God's command to Abraham. Why doesn't the Torah begin by telling us who Abraham was? Why God chose him to be the one to be the patriarch of the Jewish nation, the founder of Judaism and monotheism. Now the rabbis tell us many stories about the greatness of Abraham, how he stood up to idolatry, how he had a home open from four directions for guests. But the Torah doesn't give us any introduction, any bio about who Abraham was. And one of the commentaries, the Maharal Prague, answers the question by saying that the Torah precisely, deliberately does not tell us who he is. Because if the Torah told us about Abraham's great accomplishments, you would think God only chose Abraham because of his accomplishments, which would mean that the love of God to Abraham was conditional love. Now we know in Ethics of Our Fathers it says there are two types of love. There's love which is not dependent on anything, and then there's love which is dependent on something. And Pirkei Avot says that when you have love that's dependent on something, when that something ceases, the love ends as well, because it's conditional love. But when the love is not dependent on anything, it's just true, pure, essential love, then that love never ends. So if God's love for Abraham was dependent even on his good deeds, that would be a love that's dependent on something and therefore could come to an end. Therefore, God does not say his accomplishments, because God's saying my love to Abraham is an essential love, not dependent on anything. Just like the love of parents to children. Even though your children may have many accomplishments, ultimately that's not the reason you love them. You love them because of your internal bond that you have with them. And this is true not just with Abraham, but with all of Abraham's descendants. The love of God to the Jewish people is not dependent. Yes, God wants us to live righteous lives, but the love transcends even our actions and our deeds. And that's the definition of love. Love is not about what you receive from the other, but it's your ability to give to one another. There's a story told about this elderly couple who lived in a building, and this new young couple moved to town and they became friendly with them. And one day they were in their apartment and they saw the way he wanted a cup of coffee, and his wife went to make her husband a cup of coffee, and when she tried to open the coffee can jar, she couldn't open the jar. So she came to her husband and said, could you open the lid for me? And he opened the lid for her and she went and made the coffee. But one day they wanted to buy this beautiful couple a present. So they decided to go buy a brand new modern coffee machine that you just put a little cup in, press the button, and it automatically makes a cup of coffee. And they said this will be great because she won't have to go through the bother of making the coffee. He could just press the button and have a coffee, and she won't have to ask him for help opening up the coffee jar because it's just these little capsules. Well, they bought this beautiful present, and then a few months later they came to their apartment on another visit, and they were surprised to see the coffee machine was still in a box. And they said to the couple, why haven't you used the coffee machine maker that we bought you? And they said, you don't understand, he said. She said, my joy is making my husband a cup of coffee. I don't want an automatic machine. I want to have the pleasure of making him coffee. And he said, my joy is helping my wife open the can of coffee, being of assistance to her. Why would we give up that pleasure every day of helping one another and giving and caring and loving each other? That's the definition of love. Love that's not dependent on anything, but on the pleasure of giving. That's the love of God to Abraham, to the Jewish people, and to all of mankind. God wants to give to us more than he wants to receive from us. Have a wonderful day.